Hi everyone, I'm coming back on today to discuss a question that someone had that came in through the EMs. And it's a question that's been asked many times, that I've discussed with many people throughout the past, regarding their awakening and through the dark night of the soul, which is the first stage of the alchemical process. And in that first stage, a lot of people experience what can be called as sexual psychic attacks during their sleep. And so I want to come on and just like go over this because it's something that people have a lot of confusion about. And when you're in that first stage of awakening, everything is palpable, and what is happening between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind can confuse people. So during an awakening, what we call the right side of the brain, so the imagination and the field activated to archetypes, the mythological language that we speak on this deeper kind of atavistic level, but nonetheless it's not so much that progress isn't being had. We dip into these parts of self because we're trying to balance the left and right brain. We're trying to balance the energy, the somatic energy of our body, the intelligence of our unconscious with our waking mind. And so the bridge between the left and the right brain opens up. And during that first phase of the dark night of the soul, we're given an opportunity to see everything that's been hidden within the unconscious. This is why it's such a potent and powerful phase of the awakening. And so during that phase, everything that has been repressed within the person, all the conditioning, everything that we experienced during childhood, leading up into that point, that we didn't consciously process through, will awaken. And when it awakens, it sensorily feels legit. It feels real. It's palpable. The body feels it. And this is why a lot of people can get lost in that phase, because it is visceral and it can take over the person's experience. And without ownership of everything that's coming up, people can get lost, right? It could just turn into projections. Like everything that's coming up is being projected out, mirrored back, and then the person goes into victimhood and victimization with all their own unconscious material. And that is essentially the first veil that people speak about. And so during this phase, people often experience, what they describe as psychic attacks in the spiritual community, or sexual psychic attacks during sleep hours. And what this really is everything that has to do with that person's sexuality that has been locked within the unconscious comes to life. And essentially they're coming into contact with their own life force. Okay, because all the power that we have, the majority of it is in an unconscious place within us. And so as this veil opens up, we start accessing that life force. We start accessing that power. And so any blocks that we have to do with our personality, with our history, with our conditioning, with our sexuality, comes up to be confronted. And we are meant to work through all of that material in order to come into wholeness and to come into balance where we can integrate all these parts of self. So it's like healing the fractured self. And so the aspect of, feeling sexually attacked during sleep hours is really everything that has been repressed, that we've repressed about our sexuality, coming to the forefront. All the wounds, right, around our own connection to our life force and our sexuality comes to the forefront. It moves from the unconscious, it comes around, and we face it directly on. So it's like it's coming at us, but really it's coming from within us. So for people who, have this material come up and feel attacked, really, it is an opportunity for them to address, work with the material that's coming up, to not be afraid of it, and to work with it, and to know that it is intrinsically part of them, right? Whatever fears they're holding, whatever repressions, whatever denials, like all the avoidance, everything is coming up to finally be addressed. So it's a huge opportunity to move through really deep blocks that the person has with their own life force, with their own empowerment, with their own creativity, and with their personality. And so a lot of people will say, yes, but isn't there another dimension to this where there is something really happening within the etheric realm that we are encountering during those phases? And I think it's best not to focus on that, because we need to bring our awareness always back into center, into self, to work on our point of reference and our life force, our essence. Because yes, of course, whatever we're vibrating at, if we're vibrating in fear, we're going to encounter more fear out in the world, right? Because we're attuned to that. And there's always forces, right? There's life forces, elemental forces, energies, entities, that we're sharing this experience with, and that dip into different dimensions that we can access and that they can access. But the point of it is that as soon as you start bringing your focus back into center, into the self, and you work through the unconscious material that's coming up for you, you begin to heal your auric field. And as you begin to heal your auric field, you are less and less penetrable by external forces, because you're tuning to something different. It's like, if you can imagine a translucent bubble around you, which is your auric field, whatever traumatic events, and often night terror attacks have to do with not your own trauma, but your ancestral trauma, because it's so deep within the unconscious that it comes up disconnected from your experience, because it's part of you, but it was never part of your waking conscious experience. So all of the ancestral trauma comes up in that first veil to be worked through. All of the conditioned, any trauma that's happened within 0 to 14 years old, or afterwards, if you have experiences, that stuff will come up during that first phase of awakening. But all of that stuff is coming up, and it's meant to come up for you to address during that phase. And so I think that is the most important thing to understand regarding, what you can call psychic sexual attacks and night terrors and that sort of thing. And once you can refocus your energy into the self, there are less and less there's less and less unconscious material that can come at you, that you project out, that can come at you from the exterior. So I just kind of wanted to bring this forth because this was a question that came in many, many times for people going through the dark night of the soul, and really feeling like it's this externalized force, when ultimately everything, first and foremost, is something that we can work with from within. And without that unconscious material being projected out, there are no openings. there's no imprint. There's no attunement, misattunement, misalignment, that can then magnetize or draw in similar energies that are sitting within the field. So the less we sit and stay present with what is arising in a calm manner, the greater the fear, builds up within the person. And at that point, the greater attraction point for those energies existing within the field to interact with them, right? So the focus is always coming back into self. And you can work with that material in different ways. It can be very scary at times because, again, that first phase, that first veil does feel very real and palpable. And the mind is so powerful, the unconscious is so powerful that, if the person has experienced the battle within that first veil of the astral, often they could wake up and it's like, I have bruises, or, you feel it viscerally. So they can get lost in that experience. So my reason for coming on and talking about this was the response that I got from people still questioning this stuff, and I've never put out a video about it. And the large amount of confusion regarding that first phase of awakening and the blackening, and why things appear to be so real and so palpable, as if they're happening externally to us, and it is a both and, but ultimately it is coming from the center, from within our unconscious. So working with the unconscious material is the most important. And the more fear people go into thinking, oh, it's only external, it's happening to me, I'm being attacked, the the less chance they have, they kind of miss out on that opportunity to truly go within, own what's coming up, right? Even if it's ancestral and it's not something that's happened within your lifetime, you're given these opportunities through past life memories, through ancestral memories, to really just own more of who you are on that spiritual level. And the more we can do that inner work and integrate those parts of self, the more resilient we become in these layers, these astral layers. And eventually, after doing work on it, which is, you're meant to work on that stuff during that phase. That's what that whole phase is about. You begin to transmute and alchemize whatever was handed to you from your ancestors, whatever was, passed on to you, imposed upon you through conditioning, and you alchemize that. And your force field, your spiritual strength becomes stronger and stronger, to the point where you can no longer be affected by that, because there's no more unconscious material that hasn't been seen to be integrated. So if you're in this phase with your awakening and you're in the dark night of the soul and you're going through this, just know that there is resolve at the end. That the phase that you're in is exactly where you're supposed to be, to integrate and assimilate all that and alchemize all that unconscious material coming up and projecting out into that first veil. So I hope that this has helped everyone who is experiencing those things. It's easy to say, don't be in the fear when you're in those states, but having this knowledge is key. Having the knowledge that it's coming from your own unconscious is key in relaxing into doing the work within, and releasing that fear that it's something that's without, that's not within your control. Everything is within your control within those experiences, through the blackening, through the first stage of the alchemical process. Everything is within your control, and it is a unique process that is happening for you. It is an opportunity to really integrate all these parts, because these parts are essentially your gifts. They're what brings you the abundance, what brings you into a healthy state with your own sexuality, what brings you into co-creation with the world at large in a healthy way. So one last thing is that if you are really suppressing that life force, that creative, that sexual energy within yourself, and it has been years you haven't been addressing it, it will be extremely pronounced on the outside, right? Whatever work we haven't done, like it just it becomes larger and larger, right? It grows exponentially the more we repress it. So first you have to just look at that and just reconnect with yourself on a sensual and on a tantric level, in a safe environment for yourself, with yourself, in a loving environment. And the more you start to reconnect to that, it will be easier and easier to work through what you're being confronted with during these moments where the unconscious just comes out, hits that first veil, and ricochets back at you, mirrors back at you. So stay strong. And if you want to reach me, my website is inspiringplayfulevolution.com. I'm wishing you all a beautiful day, week, month. Take care.